So all of you who are here joining us tonight, thank you so much. We are a portion of Dunbar Consultants based in New Canaan, Connecticut, but we have Allison, who's down in Florida, and we have Robert Cummings, who's up in the Adirondacks. So we span quite a geography. We're going to try to answer as many questions for you as we can tonight. I think the focus is going to be on testing and what we anticipate is going to happen in the fall. So let's kick this off right now. Lisa and Allison are going to start answering some of the questions we received with regard to testing. Ladies?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. So it seems every day there's news about new information about standardized testing and college admissions. So we think because things are changing so rapidly, we really recommend that you check the College Board and ACT websites for updates about cancellations, about registrations. However, with that said, we think it's really important to emphasize that the colleges are aware of all of the challenges that these students are facing around testing and are working really hard to accommodate them. We're going to answer the questions that we've received thus far, but feel free to add some questions to the chat box as we go through. Okay, so first question. For the class of 2021, is it a waste of time for my student to be studying for the ACT or SAT? No, we think it's really helpful to have a score to submit. You should consider another data point for evaluation of the application. When is the best time to take the SAT? If you're a current junior in the class of 2021, you should prepare for the SAT or ACT and be ready for the next test date, because we don't know what's going to happen with it, so you need to be ready. Any word on the June testing date for the SATs? Yes, as of this afternoon, the June test date was canceled. The next testing date will be August 29th, and registration will begin in May. The College Board is looking to add a September test date, so in theory, there should be an SAT test date every month until the end of the year, beginning with August. As of this afternoon, the ACT is still planning to administer the June 13th test in person, but if you're planning to take that test, be sure to check the ACT website often for updates and any cancellation information. What will happen if the June tests are also canceled? Students who were registered for the June SAT will get early access to register for the August, September, and October test dates if they're in the high school class of 2021 and don't already have SAT scores just yet. So those students will be getting the preference for registration. Are the ACT and SAT programs companies considering adding additional test dates? Yes, but we don't know specifics at this time. We know the College Board is looking to add a test date in September. The College Board is also asking community partners such as colleges and local schools to offer additional space to accommodate the number of students hoping to take the test. They're also working towards online testing and adding additional school day test dates. But again, this is all to be determined, and we'll see down the road. Do you think colleges will require students to take the test in the fall? Yeah, the colleges that aren't test optional will be looking for test scores, even from fall test dates. And though we believe there will be flexibility in terms of when those test scores are received by deadlines. Are many universities considering accepted applications without test scores? Yes, those are considered test optional colleges. So this is the question of the day. How optional is test optional? Test optional colleges will look at scores if they're submitted, but you won't be penalized if you don't submit scores. But it's really important to note that just because a college is test optional, that doesn't mean that it is test blind. So if you have a score that is within the mid 50% range or above for that test optional college, you should submit that score. We've seen a number of colleges go to adopt test optional policies over the past month or so. Some will be pilot programs that will last a year, one application cycle. Some will be 2, and some are going as far as 3 years. Some colleges will make the change permanent. Given the news today and the uncertainty, we expect to see many more colleges adopting test optional policies, whether pilot programs or permanently, in the next few weeks and months. Will colleges weigh the scores differently? Hopefully less so this year. We don't think so. That's unlikely. If you submit scores, you should expect that they will be evaluated in the same context as they were in other years. Okay, will there be a big advantage to have a strong test score? Yes, we think so, even at test optional colleges. Colleges will definitely note strong test scores, and yeah, it would be favorable for sure. Allison, do you want to pick up the rest of the questions?
Yeah. Okay. So we had the question, what advice do you have in terms of applying early with and without SAT scores? So I wanted to take on this question because I know that for some people applying to rolling admissions colleges, like state universities that have rolling admissions, you're going to have a different strategy for applying than if you're applying to a private school with an early action deadline or an early decision deadline, or if you're applying to a state school that has just one deadline, like the University of Florida, where I live. So in terms of applying to a rolling admissions school without an SAT score, I still think that you should go ahead and apply early, even if you don't have the SAT score. They will still look at your application. They will wait on a score if they really want one, and you can always send it in when you have it. It's just good to get your application in. You don't have to have it in the moment that applications opened, but I think that it's good to get in early if you can. Usually those applications are simpler. In terms of early action and early decision, we do think that there's probably going to be movement in terms of deadlines, maybe pushing them back for depending on how many of these tests are canceled and when they actually can offer tests again. I think you should definitely apply even if you don't have a score. Again, these colleges are going to wait for you. They usually have a deadline for test scores later than their application deadline, so you can kind of have some room to still get that score in. So in terms of applying early with or without scores, don't let the lack of a score keep you from applying early or getting your application in. You're going to want a list of colleges that you're applying to that's going to reflect kind of a range of those deadlines and requirements. So that's just something you want to keep in mind when you're applying if you haven't had a chance to get a test score in yet. Is it worth it to wait and hope that there is an August test or October test, or better to apply early? It's fine to wait for the August or October test dates. I'm not sure that you're going to have a choice at this point, but to wait for the August test date at least. But you want to start preparing now. I think somebody actually asked tonight in the questions, should students start preparing over the summer for these tests? Yes, you should start preparing and studying for the tests. You have time now. Even if you're in online school, I think you probably have more time than usual, and you can link your scores to Khan Academy if you have a PSAT score, or and get that personalized free study materials. You can do online tutoring, and you can get the SAT and ACT books to practice with the real practice tests. You have a lot of time to do it, and I think you definitely should. You want to be ready to go. The minute that they have a test ready for you to take, you want to be ready to take it. Generally speaking, can you list the benefits of applying as soon as the application process opens up? So there's no real benefit to applying as soon as possible. Like I said before, even a school like the University of Alabama opens in July usually with their application. You can go ahead and apply. They don't usually require an essay. I think they will be flexible in terms of waiting for a test score. Can't remember if they're on the list now for test optional. I don't think they are. They'll wait for it. If you don't need to turn in an essay, you can go ahead and apply. If you need to write an essay, I hear from many colleges, they say, please don't be the first one to submit your application. It's usually not the strongest application they get. Take your time. It's not like you're first in line, that kind of thing. But, you know, you can, you'd want to be on the earlier side for a rolling school, especially one that isn't asking very much of you. For early action and early decision schools, there is no benefit to turning your application in early. They don't look at you any differently. if you turn it in the last day before the deadline or the first day that they open up. So take your time, do your application carefully, make sure you're putting your best foot forward. Is it true I could submit my PSAT pre-ACT scores if I don't have SAT or ACT scores? As of now, we've only heard of one college that is going to that method, and that is Swarthmore. They said that they will accept the PSAT or the pre-ACT scores in lieu of the actual SAT or ACT. I've heard the rumor that other schools might be willing to accept those, but we have not heard of any other school that's actually said they will do it. How should I decide whether to submit my scores to a test optional college? How will they evaluate me if I don't? So I think Lisa already mentioned that if your scores are in that mid 50% range or higher, then it's a good idea to submit them, the mid 50% published average of SAT or ACT scores for the college. Without a test score, everything else is very important, especially if you think about what a test score is supposed to do. Whether or not it actually does it is up for debate, and I would be on the student side on this one. But what they use them for, in theory, is to predict how a student is going to fare in college. So if you think about that and what they're trying to do instead, if they don't have the test score, they're going to look at your writing. They're going to look at your classroom teacher recommendation letters very closely to see what kind of student you are and how your teachers report who you are. They're going to look at your grades, as always. They're going to look at your course selections. So you definitely want to be challenging yourself and doing as well as you can in your classes and contributing in classes, even online. Right now, you can even be a great contributor in online classes. You just want to be that engaged student and make them believe that you are going to be able to handle work at their college. So all those things become even more important. If you look at schools like University of Chicago or Wake Forest that have already been test optional, you look at their essay prompts, they are looking for some big thinkers and some really good writers, right? Should I take subject tests? And I think we also had a question about this in our Q&A right now. Subject tests, if you have already nailed down your score and you have a great test score, then if subject tests are offered in the fall and you can take them, then sure, you can go for it. What I would say is, you know, subject tests are being taken by the best students in the country. I think it's 80th percentile of Math 2 test scores get a perfect score of 800. So in order for subject tests to really help you, you're going to need to nail it and hit it out of the park. So usually you'd take them at the end of the year if you could, after you've had a whole year of curriculum. If you take them in the fall, you're not going to have that advantage. That means that this summer, if you're planning to take them in the fall, you're really going to need to study for those subject tests and be prepared to do really well. Because in order for them to really help you, you need kind of a 750 or above. You don't want to submit a subject test score that's under 700, definitely. So keep that in mind. Another option would be if you are an AP student and you have already been in AP classes and you're signed up to take the test, then you should by all means go ahead and take the AP exams that they're offering online. If you don't want to send your scores, you don't have to, but they can be a stand-in for those subject tests because they are so specific to one subject. And all in all, my feeling would be if you don't think you're going to nail those subject tests in the fall, and that's, you know, kind of what you're thinking about whether or not to spend your time, I would say spend your time on something else this year. I really don't think that they are going to be a big factor at all, honestly. I think that with the way that everything's being canceled, the schools are looking for other things. So it's your call, but if you're going to take them, you know, you want to do well in them, and maybe the time that you would spend doing that could be used in a better way, and it's not that important this year as it would be in other years. Sorry, that's a really long answer, but it's not that simple. I'm an international student and English is not my first language. Do I need to send test ACT or ACT results to test optional colleges? Some colleges are now accepting Duolingo in lieu of these tests just for temporarily while everything is going on. You do not have to send SAT or ACT results to test optional colleges, but you do have to send TOEFL, TOEFL, or IELTS results. And if you check their website, some of these schools are accepting Duolingo this year. Will colleges give the same credit for 45-minute AP exams as they would for normal AP exams? As of now, the colleges that have said anything at all have said that they will give credit for these AP exams this year. So even though it's in general just one question and they're only 45 minutes long, the colleges that have made a statement about it have said they will accept them. Will the College Board or the ACT offer online testing if in-person testing is not possible or limited? Yes, that is what they're saying they will do. The College Board has said they are definitively working on an online test, and that they will administer it in the fall if they cannot do in-person tests. The ACT is also working on it. So yes, they will. Will deadlines for submitting scores be pushed back? We believe so, because we think that the schools that really care about them will want them if they can get them. It depends on what happens. Everything is still, they're building the airplane while they fly it. So we'll have to see how things go down. If they can offer August test dates, then maybe not. But we believe there will be a lot of flexibility. What if we never get to take a test at all? If you never get to take a test at all, then you're going to need to focus on colleges that have gone test optional for this year. However, there are some schools, namely Stanford, who have said they're not planning on going test optional right now, but they wouldn't trash your application if you didn't have a score. So if that's not confusing enough, I don't know. But I would say, you want to do everything you can to try and get a score. If you can't get a score, colleges are aware they are going to have to be flexible this year. So they might not be formally test optional, but I think we're going to have to see how it goes. I think some of them are just kind of waiting to see how things go. That is all the questions I have. Caroline, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
That's great. I was wondering, Lisa and Allison, do you want to run through the chat box? And there were a couple of really good questions here about testing. For example, one good one was what are we saying or recommending about taking the SAT with the essay or ACT with writing at this point in time?
Mm-hmm. I don't know of any schools that are asking for that essay anymore, right? Didn't the UCs drop it? So
I'm not sure that they dropped it, but now they've gone test optional.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think, I wouldn't worry about it, but
we haven't heard anyone say anything. My guess is that with all the movement to test optional, it's probably not necessary. And the flexibility that the colleges are going to show to the students with the testing, I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think it is either. I wouldn't worry about it. I see somebody asked about UF. Does it matter a single date school if you submit early? UF has actually told me directly they don't want you to submit early. They have a single deadline. They don't want early applications. They want you to work on it and do your best and turn it in. They don't care if it's the day of the deadline. So there's that.
And there's a question here about whether or not SAT subject tests are being rescheduled or canceled. We have not heard anyone specifically break out subject tests from the discussions of the test dates. So our feeling is that if they're able to hold them in their normal format, the in-school format, there's no reason to believe that they would be canceling the subject tests. That said, if they're moving to an online platform, I think because there are relatively few students who actually take subject tests, I'm not sure that they'll have the time to also get subject tests prepared for online. Does anybody have anything else to add to that?
Well, I think, subject tests are given on the test dates. So it's going to be a pinch to get a test in, never mind a subject test. So you can assume the subject tests are canceled if the test date is canceled. And if you run out of time, like Allison said, the priority should not be on subject tests. The priority should be on getting an SAT or ACT. If you're in the position to take an AP exam, do it. But nobody should be really stressed out or focusing on trying to get that subject test before they get a good, solid SAT, ACT.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and even schools like Yale, where the subject tests were still recommended, Yale just amended their policy to say they're not even recommended anymore. So I really believe of everything that you're concentrating on and everything you're trying to get in order, that would probably be my, it's a nice if you can have it kind of thing, but not my priority at all, like given everything else you could be working on.
Right. Right. Are there other testing questions?
The question about Georgetown has Georgetown said anything about their 3 subject tests yet?
Well, they became very flexible last year. Not very, but they became a little wishy-washy last year. Yeah, with saying
they
that
would accept APs.
Yeah, so I would say that's more motivation to take those AP exams if you're registered for them and to do well on them.
Now, while this is not a question that's specific to testing, it does sort of fall under this realm. So I'm going to ask you ladies this question as well. If a student is not submitting test scores, how will the schools evaluate their applications? What else will become important?
Right. So I covered that a little bit already. Everything else, like I said, they are supposed to be predicting how you're going to do in college. So the things that show your rigor on your transcript, your grades, teacher recommendation letters if they take them, especially classroom teacher recommendation letters, anything that's going to give them an indication, and especially your writing, I think, and how you think and how you're going to process college writing. It's everything else, basically. That's what traditionally test optional schools have built up their writing requirement in their applications, and they're going to look at your recommendation letters even more closely.
So just to follow up, I was on a webinar the other day with a couple of different college deans, and they said, which I found interesting, that they have learned through their training to decipher and discern academic factors in the absence of test scores. I don't know whose that is. That they have ways to find predictors and other ways to evaluate the application in the absence of strong test scores or test scores at all. So the focus will be more on the qualitative aspects of the application, as Allison suggested, between the writing, the essays, and absolutely the transcript and the rigor and the grades earned, for sure.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. Robert, we're going to move over to you. You were going to specifically address issues about what we think might be happening in the fall. And I know a lot of students are tossing around their head, is this a year that they should be trying to defer or maybe taking a gap year? So if you could start dealing with some of those, that would be terrific.
Yeah, so the big question is, what do you think will happen on college campuses in the fall? And my cute answer is, I hope everything is happening on college campuses in the fall. But no one really knows at the present time what's going to happen in terms of colleges opening up on campus, because it's all dependent on the status of the coronavirus. But I'm pretty sure that all college administrators are really working very hard on developing plans for various scenarios. One would be opening, as they traditionally have, on campus on schedule. Another possibility is to delay their opening for a month, maybe 2 months. We've even heard of some colleges potentially canceling the first semester and starting in January. We've also, we're certainly well aware that colleges are certainly closely looking at the possibility of doing the same thing they've been doing this spring and offering their classes online and not having students on campus. And I guess the fourth scenario might be a hybrid where colleges are able to open up their campuses, but not all students can come because, for example, international students may be still under some travel restrictions or having visa issues. So some of those colleges, if that happens, may do in-person classes on campus and offer online classes for students who can't be there in person. So this is all, we're all sort of eagerly waiting for colleges to decide what they're going to do. Timing uncertain, but hopefully it'll be soon. The only thing we do know about the future is that colleges seem to be canceling or moving to an online platform, their summer programs, pre-college programs for students. So it'll be very interesting to see what develops over the next month or so. So related to one of the scenarios about colleges opening the fall with online classes, the question is a gap year a good idea? Is a gap year possible if schools are going to be online? Will colleges be open to this? So most colleges have traditionally been very supportive of gap year requests if the student submits a reasonable plan for what they might do during the year. And those plans typically range from traveling to other countries, studying a language, doing some community service, working for money, maybe taking a course at another college or doing a combination of some of those things. Typically, the only restriction imposed by colleges is that students who are doing a gap year not enroll a full-time basis at other colleges during that year. So while colleges have been supportive, even in some cases, I can cite Harvard and Middlebury encouraging about gap years, I think it's possible that this year, if too many students submit requests for gap years, that some colleges may impose some limits on the number they approve and or become stricter in the programs, the plans that the gap year student wants to pursue. So I think simply saying, I want to take a gap year because I don't want to enroll in college on an online basis at the beginning, don't think that reason that reason won't fly. It needs to be something probably creative on the part of the student's part. There's also a timing issue for gap years. Colleges usually ask students to submit their requests by the time the deadline for paying your tuition deposits, May 1st or June 1st, depending on the college this year. So that deadline, May 1st or June 1st, may pose a problem for students who want to avoid online classes this fall versus those who are interested in a gap year for more traditional reasons, because colleges may not have yet decided what their plans are for the fall by May 1st or June 1st. So if a student applies and is approved for a gap year, and this is speculation on my part, if the college subsequently decides to open in the fall, it may be difficult to back out of the gap year option. And I'd welcome my colleagues to jump in here because we're dealing on, our best guesses here in terms of what may happen. Gap year plans need to be doable in the current COVID-19 environment, where traditional gap year activities may not be possible. So students need to take that into account when submitting their plans. As I said before, probably have to be a little more creative and doing things in the house or close to the house, as opposed to traveling to far off distant lands.
Yeah, I think Robert, you've got that pretty much right, which is unfortunately, families will probably have to make a decision about whether they're applying for a deferral before they actually know whether or not the college that they would deposit at is going to be online or not. And I realize that that's difficult, but I think that's the reality of where we are and where the colleges are. Robert, do you believe that the colleges, say colleges do go online in the fall, will they be lowering what they charge families?
Well, I think if they're online, they're not going to be charging room and board. That was a question, and I think from the example of what's happening this spring, I believe colleges have refunded room and board and other fees that weren't used, but they have not refunded tuition costs. Right. So I'm taking that as the example of how they may, the policy they may follow for the fall.
I think
That they
that's probably about right. Yeah.
will charge full tuition, even if it's online.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, we've got a few questions here that I know you were prepared to answer about visiting campuses and demonstrating interest this spring. And visiting campuses also, which applies to seniors who are trying to make a decision the next couple of weeks. Would you like to start with that right now?
Sure, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I looked at the questions that we got previously, and I've seen some of the ones that have been scrolling as we've been talking, and I think I kind of blended my thoughts into all of the above. This is a common question from my juniors and their parents is, how do I visit a college and get to know it as I refine my list, and at the same time, how do I demonstrate interest that some of them seemingly, strongly encourage? So let me say up front, the colleges are fully aware of the predicament and the challenges you face. They're not going to hold you to the previous standards of demonstrated interest, but there are ways you can explore all the alternative opportunities, as you investigate them, and still show them that you're looking at their school. But let me also say, even before this pandemic, the colleges, recognize that not everybody can come for an in-person visit. I mean, consider the international student where the time and money would preclude it, or an athlete that is stuck in season and can't get away due to his commitments, or the calendar just doesn't lend it to a family or a time and distance, who knows what it is. So they know everybody can't get there and make the trip. So they created a lot of good resources in anticipation of that. But now in our new reality, they've really upped their game, and I'm pleased to see it. And I think you guys have all looked at it as well. There's really good quality content through live and recorded webinars, student and faculty videos, creative information on social media. You should take advantage of all these new resources where you can learn about everything that you would do on campus, whether that's trying to figure out what academics you want to pursue, or the research, or the clubs, internships, Greek life, how the food is, and whatever and else. I think in our newsletter last week, we published 3 really good sites that you can visit. The one that comes to mind is youvisit.com, which has over 600 colleges on their list, where you can do interactive tours and even virtual reality tours if you have the headset. And they're really well crafted and informative. Oftentimes you can also go just directly to a college's website where you're interested, and you'll find that they have a virtual tour for sure. I haven't found one that doesn't, but they also offer, many still offer, a live information session, which you can sign up for just as if you were on campus. And you're gonna hear from a current student and an information officer, admissions officer, on Zoom or WebEx, just like you were on site, and it allows you to ask your specific questions and hear from that student. It adds a lot of color to the situation, and their experience at the school. And you're going to get everything, albeit they're broadcasting from their couch. So it's a great way to demonstrate interest as well, because you will have signed up for it, they will know it, and that's just the way to go. There's also a new thing that I saw one that's going to be next week. There's virtual college fairs, and there's one next week with 40 colleges, and I think they're going to pop up all over the place. The website on that, I think it was coalitionforcollegeaccess.org. We can probably post that somewhere along the way. Let's not forget social media. It's just a great tool for learning, and this is the perfect time to begin, following social media posts by schools that you're considering. You can learn a lot about an institution by what they're paying attention to, what they're sharing, and what kinds of messages they're putting out. Do you like them? Do you agree with it and what they're saying? And then, individual colleges are also going to be promoting their own events. So be on the lookout for those. So the colleges you're interested, go to their website, put your name on the list for notifications. And again, that's showing demonstrated interest. So I think that's another way you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Another one that, I think everybody knows, and it's sort of obvious, is if a student has some friends who graduated a year or 2 ahead of them, they should talk to them. It's a great resource. They can give you a really good perspective of what happens on campus. If you don't know somebody, I'm sure your high school counselor can connect you with somebody who's at that school. The other one that came to mind was the college admissions officers. They're stuck at home just like we are, and they want to engage. They're not on the road, so take advantage of it. Search the website for their name, and if you have, thoughtful questions, make sure that they're something that is different. Send them an email, introduce yourself. That's another point of engagement that I think is really important. In this situation or any other, it's just, that's the person that's going to advocate for you around the admissions table. So we don't really know what the future is going to bring. I think you've heard that across the board here. But maybe we will open up for visits late summer. I don't know the answer to that. Or maybe it'll be the fall, or maybe it'll be winter. If the calendar's pushed back a bit, we may have more time. Worst case, it could be an accepted students day if you haven't visited on campus. But in the meantime, this is, it's a time to be resourceful and spend your time researching and exploring the many options that are out there. And I think they're really doing a good job giving you a chance to see what they're all about.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start going to some of the questions in the Q&A box that we have not yet answered, most of which, if they fit into the boxes that we felt we could get to tonight, we have answered, but there are a couple of others. And there's, Allison, I'm going to ask you if you could speak for a little bit about the issue of high schools going pass-fail. There's a number of related questions to that. You've probably seen them floating around in the chat box. Are you comfortable addressing that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Yes, no problem. So a lot of schools have gone to pass-fail, and then there are other schools, like a lot of ours in Florida, that are sticking to real grades. The colleges have said across the board that they are completely aware that the grading is inconsistent right now and that it's not a normal semester. A lot of the colleges themselves have had to go to pass-fail grades or to offer it to their students. So if your schools have gone to pass-fail, you do not need to worry or stress out that this is going to hurt your student in terms of admissions. The colleges have said they will not let that affect them. What I would say is that you need to be aware that first semester of senior year grades are probably going to be important, very important, especially first quarter, because for early admissions, early action, those deadlines that are early, they will probably be able to get those first quarter senior grades, and they're probably going to want them. So what they're going to be looking for is for the grades before this semester and the grades first quarter of senior year to be consistent and to be consistently strong. So do the best you can right now, learn what you can. It's important to learn as much as you can in terms of like testing and in terms of foundations for your classes next year, but you do not need to worry about pass-fail grades at all, and it will not hurt them. I did see some questions about like how to raise your grades if you were hoping to raise your grades this semester and now it's pass-fail, or now it's online school and it's not the most ideal situation. Honestly, they're going to be looking at first quarter grades next year. You need to just buckle up and know that you need to hit the ground running in the fall, and hopefully they won't be online learning in the fall. But if they are, then you do your best and you see what you can do. This is, again, all the colleges and all the admissions officers are going through this global pandemic with you, and they're very aware of what's going on, and they're not going to penalize students because of it. They need students. They want strong students. If you're a strong student, you're going to be able to show that. So I don't stress out about that.
That's great. Thank you very much. There's a question here about deposits. There's a lot of floating stuff going on here where you've got people not knowing whether or not a certain colleges are going to be online versus not. And they're wondering, is it okay for them to double deposit in the event that one college does decide to move to online and the other doesn't? Then they could go to the one that doesn't. What do we have to say about that? Also, if there's a wrinkle, for example, one college in the US and one college in Canada, does that make a difference?
I think double depositing is not a great idea. I honestly, all of these colleges want to open up. So it's not like, this is not an ideal situation for anybody to start online in the fall. If there are colleges that are opening in the fall, then I think that most of them will open in the fall if they can. So I think that you need to, you know, go with your, like, actually pick the college you want to go to, that you believe you can financially make feasible no matter what is happening, if it's online or not. But I don't see that these colleges are going to tell you whether or not they're going to be online before they have their deposit deadlines. And I think
I'm not even sure
that
I'm not sure, they don't know.
they don't
Right.
know.
They
Yeah,
don't
they
know.
don't know.
And then, so I think that the restrictions against double depositing, which are essentially enforced by NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling, is not changing even in this environment. And what I have actually seen in the past is a student who double deposited when the colleges figured that out through his high school, because the high school could only send one transcript. They both rescinded their admission. I mean, I hate to sound threatening, but in a worst case scenario, double depositing could put you at risk, because remember, when you applied, especially through the Common App, you specifically signed and said that you understood you would only deposit at one college. Now, if you've got different deposit deadlines, one has moved from May 1st to June 1st, and the other is still May 1st, and you feel like you need a little bit more time, I think there is flexibility to call a college, an admissions officer or financial aid officer, and ask for a little bit more time to make that decision.
Yeah.
Yes, and this one question about, can you put a deposit down and then withdraw in September before school starts? Yeah, you'll lose your money and you won't have a college necessarily, but you can put a deposit down now and withdraw in September before school starts. You just won't get that deposit back.
And then you would have to that next year, go through the whole application process again,
Yeah.
which is trickier when you're not actually in school.
Yes.
And dealing with your teachers and with your high school counselors on a regular basis. But it is absolutely doable.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, what other questions do we want to hit on here?
Let me just, Caroline, let me just jump in and on, you know, gap years and deferrals. I know that the University of California, I'm sure there's some students and listening in who maybe have applied there and thinking of going there. They do not accept gap year requests. If you don't want to go this fall, tell them that, and then you have to reapply for next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
here's a question: do we think any of the colleges will move away from need-blind admissions, given the uncertainty of enrollment numbers? And certainly the financial hit that many of them are taking. I think those that have claimed to be need blind at this point, I think that number is going to get smaller. We've seen indication, I mean, even Harvard has told us that they've got salary freeze, a hiring freeze. They're not giving out raises this year. So with even Harvard, with their enormous endowment, is having to cut some corners financially. I think almost everybody is going to be having a tough time. So it is very possible that some colleges that have been need blind might not be able to be next year, although we have not officially heard anyone indicate so.
Someone asked if there's a lot of students taking deferrals or gap years this year, will it affect the juniors next year in terms of spaces, because those students will be coming back next year? Will it make it harder for schools to accept new applicants? I mean, you guys can weigh in. I think that the colleges have to approve gap years and deferrals, and I think that this is what enrollment management is that they are going to need to balance how many they can defer or give gap years to, knowing they're going to need another class coming in. So I would say, in terms of bed space, if you're talking about you know, an Ivy like Princeton that admits based on bed space, if they have bed space, they're going to admit as many as they can, and they're going to be balancing that out. But you know, for other colleges with bigger financial concerns, there's going to be they're probably just not going to approve everybody to have a deferral or a gap year.
It's exactly what you just said. It's enrollment management. So they're not going to approve everybody for a gap year. And what they'll do instead is they'll go to their wait lists. which actually brings us
Yeah.
to another topic, which is if anybody's interested in hearing about wait lists this year, we saw a lot of kids put on wait lists this year. Traditionally, wait lists have not started moving before May 1st so much, and we have already seen a lot of kids getting very nice offers off wait lists as colleges are anticipating that this is going to be a tough year for a lot of people. So if you've got a student who's on a wait list and they're really eager to get off that wait list, they should be in touch with that college unless the college has specifically told them not to. The strongest thing you can say to a college if you want to get off a wait list is, if you accept me, I will show up. I'm going to be there. I'll make a commitment to you. And you should only make that commitment to one college. But yeah, they're just not going to defer enough students to create a problem for the following year's enrollment.
Right.
Okay, question again. Do we think that acceptance numbers are going to increase overall because there's a smaller applicant pool? I do think that the shape of these applicant pools and who gets accepted is probably going to change over the next year. It's not that I say this with any happiness, but I do think that full pay kids will probably have more of an advantage, because I think there will be less money available for financial aid next year, certainly. As to whether it carries beyond next year, I'm not sure I'm prepared to predict out that far.
I would guess that there are going to be fewer international students applying to U.S. colleges in the
right.
couple of years, and but those that do, therefore, may have a stronger chance of getting in, simply because colleges still like the diversity of international students. So if you're, I don't know whether we have any international students listening or if they'll listen to the recording, but I think if that's still a possibility, the chances may be better.
And more of them are full pay, because colleges don't tend to give a lot of financial aid to international kids.
Right.
Do we think that the acceptance rate for early decision will change next year, sort of as a bid to help colleges understand their yield better and manage their budgets better? I think that's a possibility. I'd say and I think the shape of who gets in early decision, I think that could change as well, slightly.
So let me just ask the question, because if will there be more interest in early decision or less? And I say maybe less because students may not be able to visit campuses, may not be able to focus in on that one college that they need to apply early decision to make that commitment to. So is it possible that there could be fewer kids applying early decision?
I think absolutely, especially because the financial commitment.
And just the overall commitment, right? Rather than play out the regular application round to find out, like, if we go through this again,
right,
they have the option to stay closer to home.
So if there are fewer kids applying early decision, those that do may have a better chance, just like an international student.
Well, that's the argument as well for if, as you said, Robert, there might be fewer international students. And does that actually help the domestic student get some of their reaches? Would it extend it a little bit? It's a possibility. I've read that a few places.
Here's a question. Do we think that juniors are going to have it tougher getting into college and getting financial aid? I was starting to type a response that said, I don't think it's going to necessarily be harder to get in, but I do think it might be harder to get financial aid. Do you all agree with that?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, especially, I mean, you were going to have to wait and see what happens for the fall, and a lot of it hinges on what happens this summer and what happens this fall. But yeah, I mean, all the colleges have taken a financial hit, so they might not have as deep a pocket to reach into when the time comes.
And they may take another financial hit this fall if they can't reopen and they're offering online, and they have, residential halls that are empty and they can't charge room and board.
Right.
Here's a question: advice and or recommendations on how to have a productive summer for rising seniors and what that might look like. I'm going to go back to some of the links that we sent out in a newsletter when this first started. There are lots of things a student can do during this period of time. Sorry, let me pull up some of the links that I had. One thing that they can do is they can get involved with some online courses, something that maybe they haven't been able to, sorry, I've sort of gotten a little ahead of myself, something that they might not have been able to study in school yet, whether it's Roman architecture or genetics or game theory, or the literature of, you know, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Coursera, Coursera is a website that has great online classes from all kinds of different colleges and places. So you know, if they want to explore something academic and be able to demonstrate to the colleges their academic chops, their intellectual interests, that's a great way to start. They could literally read 1 or 2 books a week if they like to read, and write about the books that they're reading. On our website, we have a reading list. What I love about our reading list is it's not just a list of titles and authors, but we've written a small abstract about each book. So a student can look through and sort of look what sounds interesting, see what sounds interesting to them. They could, if they're a writer, they should write. If they're an artist, they should create art. If they're a musician, they should craft their musical abilities. They can be recording. There's all kinds of technology out there right now. One of the apps that I've been working with is Dolby On, which is great for recording both audio and video and managing your sound after you recorded. Right now, they should be exploring some of the stuff that fascinates them most, that interests them most, that in a normal school year, they wouldn't necessarily be able to. And find ways to sort of record what they are doing so that they can then highlight those interests and what they've done in their college application. I also think this is a great time to find ways to serve your community. There's a group in our town, shout out to Nicole Busby here. She's done an amazing job putting together a homework helper group where she pairs high school students with elementary school students. And they meet with their assigned kid 2 or 3 times a week. They're helping them with homework. I think in some respects, they're also able to just do some remote babysitting, whether that's coloring with them or reading to them or teaching them songs. It gives the parents a little bit of a break, and it's all being done as a service. To the extent that a student can get involved in whether it's helping with delivering groceries or running errands, picking up prescriptions for their neighbors and community members who aren't supposed to be out there themselves, to the extent that they can do that and do it safely in a way that both the student and their family feels is safe, that's also a great thing to do. You can reach out to your local churches, you can reach out to community centers and find out what opportunities are out there. You could do yard work. And honestly, finding ways to do any of the above and earn a little money doing that is, if your family is in a crunch right now, one or both of your parents have lost their jobs and you need to go out there and earn money, these are all things that you can do to go out there and earn a little bit of money and help your family out.
And I think that it's important to stress that a job is just as valid and important and meaningful to colleges as
Absolutely.
volunteer work is.
Absolutely.
Or anything else.
Absolutely, particularly in these days.
And
Yeah.
Caroline, I think you've sort of listed a whole lot of great ideas for people to invest themselves in. There's also the creativity is going to be a really interesting thing that I think colleges may take a focus on. You know, what did you do with your time? And some kids, I have a student who's at a boarding school who was going to do a creative writing thing for like 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, that age group, because she really liked teaching, that sort of thing. She was going to create a group, and then she was going to take it to her summer, where she goes in the summer, and do it there. I think that, I was talking to her about it, and she said, could I take this and do it online, and would it look the same? I said, look, if you take your passion for something that you really liked and you wanted to to carry on, and you've spent a year doing it, this is a great way to show that you were flexible, that you showed a little versatility, and you worked around a problem. And I think it's helpful, as you say, it's sort of babysitting for the kids that she's going to be teaching. It's great for her, and she hoped to grow the program. So I think, taking those extracurriculars to the next level and adapting them to the situation we're in is a good idea.
I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to address one thing because I didn't get to financial aid, but to all of it, but I wanted to address one question. For those seniors who have been accepted to a college and your family's situation has changed because of the pandemic or for any other reason, you definitely can go to the college now and you can ask them for a change of circumstance form. All the colleges are taking phone calls or emails from their houses. They're having their calls forwarded, or they answer calls. And there is a form called a change of circumstance form. You will need to document the change. They're not going to just take your word for it. You're going to need to prove what's happened. You need to outline how your income has changed from 2019, 2018 until now, what this loss will mean. But if you have that documentation and if you call them, that is what they're there for. The financial aid officers want to help you. So you absolutely should go to them and tell them what's happened. They need students. And if they can, they are going to try to make it possible for you. That is need-based aid. That is not merit aid. That is actual change of circumstance. Somebody's lost a job. Salaries have been cut, whatever. But don't be afraid just because something has happened to go back to them. I wanted to make sure we got that out there.
That's great. Thank you. I'm running through a lot of these questions and online, the Q&As. I know that my colleagues are doing the same. So if you've got additional questions that you would like to have us answer, go ahead, keep typing them in, and we'll be picking them up and answering.
And
question here is, do we think tuition is going to rise because of COVID-19? I don't think that's a possibility because I don't know. I think it's gonna be hard enough on families as it is. Does anyone disagree?
No.
No.
It's gonna be flat. Yeah.
I think so.
Caroline, I see people asking for the website. So you might want to put.
Yes, I did just send the website.
We do not have an Instagram account.
Yeah, we do not have Instagram. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a website. It's dunbarconsultants.com, but I've also put the link in the Q&A. I'm going to see if I can get the poll out to see if people would like us to do this again. We would be happy to do a webinar of this kind every 2 or 3 weeks if we think there's enough interest. So I've just sent that poll out there, and hopefully you all will let us know what you think. See what else we've got here. How bad is a C on a transcript? It all depends where the student is applying.
And when the C happened.
And in what?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Context, please.
Yeah, that's a hard question. But if it was freshman year and you've done a lot better since then, maybe not so bad.
And if it was going to be the spring and now you're getting a pass instead of a fail, okay, there you go. It worked for you. All right.
There's a lot of context on that one. Geographical diversity at selective colleges, more of an advantage than usual. I mean, geographical diversity, if you're truly geographically diverse, like you're from Wyoming or North Dakota, I think you're always at a really good advantage. I don't know that it's going to be that much more of an advantage than usual.
No.
Yeah.
The question may be because people will be more reluctant to travel distances to go to college.
Right.
So people will,
You know what? That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Question, if online classes are in the fall, what is the best way for students that need accommodations to engage with their college/university?
So
I think they need to talk to the academic services people, right?
Office of Disability, yeah. You can talk to it, and it depends on if you are a senior and you're talking about going to college in the fall. You definitely want to be in touch with the Office of Disability now and see if you can talk to them now. Your 504 or your IEP is not going to necessarily follow you, but the accommodations that you have on it, you can talk to the college about whether or not they can offer something similar, or if they want to see what those accommodations have been. If you've already been accepted, you definitely want to talk to them and let them know what you think your needs are and what they offer. If you're a junior and you're talking about needing accommodations eventually, you don't want to be talking about that next fall, although it's a good question to ask in terms of, when you're on a tour, if you get to go on a tour. But if you're going to the college, their Office of Disability should be working on that.
Here's a quick question. Is it worth it to take an AP Bio class your senior year if you haven't had an AP Science before, or can the student stay with an honors class? And again, this is all about context. I guess from my perspective, if you believe you can do well in that AP Bio class and get a B+ or better, then I would say absolutely do it. But I would not do it if you don't think you can do well, thrive in there, and do well in there.
How can you tell if a school is rolling admissions? You need to go to their website and go to the admissions part of their website, and they will spell out for you how you apply to their college. And if they're rolling, it means that they don't have one deadline. They are taking applications all year. For instance, I'm in Orlando. UCF is a rolling admissions school. They open up August 1st, and they're still taking applications right now. So they take them all the way up until May 1st. They don't have as much room now as they did in September or October, but they're still taking applications. So that's what rolling is, and you can tell by looking at the school website.
There's a question here specific to UConn. Does anyone from Connecticut get into UConn early decision? UConn doesn't have an early decision, any early program. They just have one regular decision deadline. And what GPA do you need? What I would do is I would really look at your school's track record, because I think that's going to vary slightly from high school to high school, as high schools sort of have different grading policies. So that's an excellent question to ask your school guidance counselor. If they have a software like Naviance, you can actually look that up for yourself and take a look at the scattergram and see where your student might fall in there. And if they don't have that, then I would ask your school counselor.
Is it better to get a B on AP Calc senior year or take AP Stats, which is a class you need for your potential major, and get an A? My opinion is AP Calc and get a B. But
like B in AP Calc
and get an A. That would even be better. But
okay, but that's
don't get greedy.
That's what everybody says.
No.
Yeah, don't get greedy. We would all say the B in Calc.
Stats is an elective math. So even though it's considered a math class for math credit, in terms of the college's eyes, even if you need it for your major, you can take it later, or you can take both if you really want to get crazy and take Calc and Stats. But Stats is not the core math track. You want to take Calc if you can.
There's a question here. What if a student is out for a few months in the fall for medical reasons, back to school, and now they're pass-fail? Are medical reasons taken into consideration? That's absolutely something that you can discuss in an application and an additional information section. It's something that your high school counselor can address in their letter of recommendation as well. It will put more focus on the first semester and first quarter grades for senior year. It might be difficult to apply somewhere early when you only have first quarter and not first semester grades. But yes, medical reasons will definitely be taken into consideration. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap this up. Oh, wait, there are more questions. Is there anything else that we impacted this on state schools, cost, admission, sustainability? I don't know that tuition is going to go up. I think it's going to have a huge impact on financial aid. In terms of admissions, they may be admitting more students next year because they need to, based on people's financial situations. Sustainability, I'm not sure that's going to be affected.
Can I add? I'm not sure you may have mentioned this, Caroline. I was typing an answer to another question, but I think state revenues are going to be really hit by loss of sales taxes. Did you address that?
I didn't address it specifically, but no, keep going.
So sales tax revenues are going to go way down. So the state budgets are going to be really constrained in terms of ability to give aid to their state schools, state universities.
Right.
One question here, how do you know which test is better for your child, the SAT or the ACT? I would have your child do a full-length practice test. You can do it at home, one of each, and then there are concordances online where you can compare how they scored. to give you a sense of whether they really, whether one format is better for them than the other. If the formats are equivalent, which they often are, they usually are, then I would go with whichever one your child finds least stressful.
And make sure you time the child's timed when they take the
Timing the
practice test at
sections.
home, because the timing and the pacing of the two tests is very different.
They're that's a really
Also,
great
there's
point.
a question specifically for you about.
So there's
Just
one
a sec, let me finish.
specific.
Just a sec. I want to finish on the diagnostic testing, and I would make sure that you specifically use an actual test from former test from the College Board and an actual former test from the ACT. You can get books online from Amazon or anywhere else online. It doesn't have to be Amazon.
Yes. Okay. In my opinion, will this situation affect Bright Futures, the elevated scores for 2021? Okay, so in the state of Florida, we have a state scholarship program called Bright Futures, and this year they were going to make the score threshold higher for SAT scores in order to even it out after the SAT was redesigned in 2016. I do not think this is going to affect those thresholds. No, I mean, first of all, Bright Futures still has not made any announcements whatsoever, and I am encouraging everyone to email Commissioner Corcoran and ask him to make a decision and come out with some announcements, because everybody is waiting to see if they can have their tuition. However, no, I don't think it's going to affect the test score thresholds, because those thresholds were raised because of the redesigned SAT. And even with all of this going on, I think they're still going to be looking for those test scores to be that high, especially since it's a state-funded scholarship program. And again, everybody is going to be a little bit shallower in their pockets this year. It is funded by the lottery system. We do have money, but you know that Bright Futures program is funded every year on a yearly basis. They don't guarantee that they're going to fully fund it every year. So no, I think that you should plan on needing to get that elevated SAT score. I don't think this is going to make them, I think they might extend deadlines, but I don't think they're going to lower that threshold. I will say, in favor of the ACT threshold went down a point to get the 75% scholarship this year. So maybe if you are really, really hopeful about it, pay some attention to that ACT and think if maybe that would be better. Because if you get a 25 on the ACT, you can get 75% tuition paid. And the ACT stayed the same and went down on that lower one. So the SAT went up, ACT didn't. So maybe you focus on the ACT.
Excellent. Question: if a student has accommodations based on testing, but the testing is a few years old and you're planning to get updated testing, but now unable to, will the colleges be more flexible to accept your older testing? I don't know that they will. The good news is that so many colleges are going to be test optional moving forward, that testing should be less of an important factor in the application process. All right, guys, we are in fact going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I probably should have sent the poll out a little earlier, because those of you who were still here with us at the end, yes, you do want us to do this again. So I would say probably in 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the flow of news from the colleges or from the testing organizations, we will set one of these up again. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, my partners, for being so fabulous. You are the best. And I will talk to you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.